Hello everyone, this is part 5 of What If Naruto Married Ino, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
They were both awoken by the sound of pounding on the door at 10 and they both groaned. Typical Pa. Naruto wanted to ignore it. Unfortunately though, Ino knew how it worked. If they didn't answer it, then whoever it was would just knock louder. Ino slipped out of the bed and put on Naruto's boxes and shirt as she walked to the door and opened it up to see Sakura standing there. Ino rolled her eyes with a sigh. What do you want, Sakura? Ino had been extremely happy that the pink-haired kunoichi had left her and Naruto alone over the last few months after Naruto had threatened her. Sakura looked at her old friend and sighed and noticed that Naruto wasn't standing by Ino like normal. Where is Naruto at Ino? Ino rolled her eyes at the question and looked at Sakura. My fiancé is in our bed since I wore him out last night and I would really like to rejoin him. Sakura heard that Ino had put extra emphasis on the word my. I know that he is yours, Ino. I don't like it, but I know he won't leave you. He made that clear. Ino smiled at this. She was glad that someone who seemed to always want what she had now realized she couldn't have her Naruto. Then what is it that you want? Naruto had noticed that Ino was still gone, with a groan as he slipped on while grabbing some shorts as well as a beater while walking out of the bedroom and stood in the hallway. Ino-chan, are you coming back to bed, babe? Ino looked back at Naruto then gave him a smile. Yeah, I will be back in a second, Naruto-kun. Just have to get rid of our guest. Naruto looked over Ino's shoulder to see that Sakura was standing there smiling at him and he rolled his eyes as he went and got a cup of water. Ino looked back at Sakura who was blushing from seeing Naruto and snapped her fingers in Sakura's face. What do you want, Sakura? I want to go lay back down with my fiancé. Sakura extended her hand to Ino. All Ino did was look at it and then back at Sakura. I wanted to tell you as well as show you that no matter how big a mistake Naruto is making by being with you, I will stop trying to steal him from you. Ino didn't really care for the phrasing that she used by slowly shook Sakura's hand and nodded her head to her then closed the door. She turned to see Naruto leaning on the wall in the hallway looking at her. You don't actually believe her, do you, baby? Ino looked at him and smiled at him. I don't believe a word that came out of her mouth, Naruto-kun. She will keep trying to take you from me, but she won't succeed. Naruto smiled at his fiancée and kissed her cheek as he handed her the cup of water then lifted her up to carry her back to their bedroom. The only person that can make us stop being together is you, Ino-chan. Don't worry about anyone else, so let's go get some more sleep. Ino put her arm around Naruto's neck and smiled at him as he carried her to their room like he always did. Sounds as if you are stuck with me forever then, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled as he laid her down on their bed then laid down with her. Ino made quick work of taking off his shirt and laid her head down on his chest making him smile. I would love if it was just me and you forever, Ino-chan. Ino kissed Naruto's chest and nuzzled her head and yawned. Good, because that is how it will be, Naruto-kun. Just you, me, forever. Naruto smiled as she felt her breathing go to a calm and steady pace making him know that she was asleep. He held her close to him as he stroked her hair as he felt sleep clinging at him and he fell asleep as well. They woke back up at one to the sound of yelling and pounding at the front door. They both groaned. It was Kiba and Hinata fighting again. Well, it was usually just Kiba getting yelled at. Naruto held Ino to the bed so she couldn't get up. Maybe if we don't answer then they will go away. They aren't like everyone else. Ino smiled as she laid her head back on Naruto and then they heard the deadbolt unlock making him sigh loudly. I forgot that we gave them a key. Why did we do that? Ino couldn't remember at the time. She just knew that she wished that they hadn't at the moment and then their bedroom door busted open and Hinata stood there looking at him as Naruto pulled the sheet up on him. I knew they were home. Ino and Naruto looked over at the bedroom door and Naruto looked at him as he sighed. I want the key we gave you two back, all right, Kiba. Hinata looked at the two blondes and then looked over at Kiba and yelled, well, tell them what you did this time. Kiba scratched the back of his head and then looked over at Hinata. But I don't know what I did, Hinata. All I did was ask if I could make lunch today. Naruto groaned and rolled over in the bed putting his back to his friends. He wanted no part in such a stupid fight. To be honest, Ino felt like doing the same thing as her fiancé. Why does him wanting to make lunch have to be a big deal, Hinata? Hinata looked at Ino in surprise. Well, it means that he doesn't like my cooking obviously. If he did like it he wouldn't want to make the food. Kiba scratched his head as he looked at her some more. I just wanted to try and give you the day off is all, Hinata. Hinata stormed out of Naruto and Ino's apartment, leaving Kiba there as he looked at her and sighed as his gaze returned to the two blondes. I don't understand. She just gets mad at me for everything that I do. Naruto turned back around to look at his friend, try to have an actual conversation with her that doesn't drag Ino and I into it. I personally don't like to play referee for your marriage. If you do that then maybe things can work out for you. Ino laid her head down on her actual pillow as she started to drift off to sleep and Naruto looked at Kiba. Kiba nodded and then left their apartment and yelled an apology to them and Naruto put his arm around her, inhaling her smell as he kissed the back of her neck. You smell like flowers, babe. Ino smiled as she fell asleep with her fiancé holding her. Like a blink of the eye the next couple months passed and it was time for their wedding. Naruto stood at the aisle and looked nervous. There were so many things that could go wrong with this day and he looked over at his friend and best man Kiba, who currently was in a trial separation with Hinata. Standing next to him was Neji, who was currently in his second month into a relationship with Tenten. Both of the said women were standing on the other side of the altar as they all waited for Ino. The music started and Ino was walked down the aisle with Inoki in a stunning white dress, making Naruto smile at the mere sight of her. When she got to the end of the aisle, Naruto walked over and shook hands with Inoki. He then escorted Ino to the front with a large smile as he continued to look at her. You look so beautiful, Ino-chan. Ino blushed as she stood there and looked over at him. You look extremely handsome as well, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled at her and then they stood there as they went through the ceremony. When they arrived at the end of the ceremony, he gave her a chakra-filled kiss. Ino stood there in daze, then when he stopped the chakra-filled kiss he gave her another quick kiss to snap her out of it. I love those kisses, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled at her as he looked at her and ran his hand on her cheek. You can have as many of them as you want, Mrs. Uzumaki. Ino smiled at him as he said her new last name and he offered her his arm as he escorted her down the aisle to their reception. The two of them sat at the head table with Neji, Tenten, Kiba, Hinata, Inoki and Ina. Hinata was sitting on the other side of the table from Kiba, who was staring intensely at his wedding ring. Naruto and Ino were worried about the two of them. Hinata was getting mad at him for every little thing as Kiba was fighting and trying desperately to save their marriage. Ino was leaning her head of Naruto's shoulder and he smiled at her, then looked at his friend, and Hinata was looking at Kiba as well. Naruto kissed Ino on the forehead to get her attention. As she looked at him she smiled as he kissed her on the lips. Care to dance, Mrs. Uzumaki? Ino smiled as she nodded her head yes. Naruto stood up and offered her his hand as she grabbed it. He helped her up, then escorted her to the dance floor and put his hands on her hips as she put her hands around his neck. Naruto smiled at her as they danced and leaned his forehead against hers. Then everyone stopped dancing when they heard yelling, "No, I will not dance with you." They looked over at Hinata, who was storming away from Kiba, and they sighed. Poor Kiba, he is trying so hard to work things out with her. Promise me we will never be like that, Ino-chan. Ino smiled as she looked at him, then rested her head on his chest as they started to dance again. I promise we will never be like that, Naruto-kun. Do you know what she is even acting like this for? Naruto looked at the top of her head and then back over at Kiba, who was sitting at the table staring at this wedding ring again. He didn't come home right away after his last mission, but to be honest I can't say I really blame him. We hear him getting yelled at all the time for the stupidest things. Ino nodded her head as she felt bad for Kiba. He stares at his wedding ring all the time. I wonder if they will be able to work things out. Naruto just continued to hold her as they slowly danced and she tightened her hold on Naruto. They are both my friends, but I think that they are going to end in divorce towards the end. Ino sighed. It was depressing that two of her good friends would probably get divorced, but Naruto was right about that, probably, but we will last forever, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled as he wrapped his arms around her and kissed her gently on her lips, then smiled at her again. Yes, we will, gorgeous Mrs. Uzumaki. The newlyweds continued to dance until Inoki and Ina came over. Naruto, mind if I have a dance with my daughter? Naruto smiled at his father-in-law and then stopped dancing with his wife, gave her a quick kiss, then handed Ino's hand to Inoki. He smiled as he watched Ino and her father dance and he looked at Ina. Would you like to dance, Mrs. Yamanaka? Ina smiled at her new son-in-law and she took his hand and he danced with her next to Inoki and Ino as Inoki smiled at his daughter. You enjoy your wedding, princess. Ino smiled at her father and nodded her head. Yeah, it was a beautiful and I got to marry the man that I love, which makes it a perfect day. Naruto was dancing with Ino and heard Ino, and when the two danced past Ino he kissed her cheek quickly. I love you more, Ino Uzumaki. Ino blushed as Naruto kissed her cheek and professed his love for her with her new name, and she looked at him. No, I love you more, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto smiled at her and winked at her. Don't think so, my dear, but it is your day, so I will let you win today. The newlyweds stopped dancing with Inos' parents since it was time for cake. He escorted his wife back to the table as they ate it, and Inos' choice of cake had been perfect. She had Naruto try multiple pieces, but he always said that they tasted good, but she should pick. They finished eating cake and Naruto looked at Ino as she cuddled into his shoulder. He smiled and leaned down by her ear and whispered into it, if you want, wife, then I will sing for you in front of everyone today. Ino smiled at Naruto. When they first started dating he didn't want her telling people he could sing, and she always found it special as a thing between them two. Irregardless, he was her husband and she wanted to show him off. If you want to sing for me, then I will allow you to, husband. Naruto looked at her and kissed her cheek, then whispered back into her ear, that isn't what I said, babe. I said if you want me to I will, but you have to pick the song. Ino smiled at him and looked into his blue eyes, then leaned in and kissed him gently. I want you to sing Amazed for me, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled at her and kissed her passionately before he stood up and walked over to the stage. Naruto grabbed a guitar and tapped the mic, getting everyone's attention. Usually I only doing this for my gorgeous wife, but I want her to have the best day possible and she loves when I sing for her, so all of you are going to learn something new today. Ino stood and walked over to the stage and looked at her husband as he started to strum the guitar, and he smiled at her as he started to play the song. Every time our eyes meet, this feeling inside me is almost more than I can take. Baby, when you touch me, I can feel how much you love me. And it just blows me away. I've never been this close to anyone or anything. I can hear your thoughts. I can see your dreams. I don't know how you do what you do. I'm so in love with you. It just keeps getting better. I want to spend the rest of my life with you by my side. Forever and ever. Every little thing that you do. Baby, I'm amazed by you. Ino blushed as she listened to her husband sing, and she looked around at all the women looking at him with lust in their eyes, which she didn't care for. She walked up the steps to sit on the stool, and Naruto smiled at her, then sang directly to her, no longer facing the crowd. All the women were looking at Ino with envy in their eyes. Ino sat there and smiled as she saw this and listened to Naruto as she looked at him, and he sang her song for her. The smell of your skin. The taste of your kiss. The way you whisper in the dark. Your hair all around me. Baby, you surround me. You touch every place in my heart. Oh, it feels like the first time every time. I want to spend the whole night in your eyes. I don't know how you do what you do. I'm so in love with you. It just keeps getting better. I want to spend the rest of my life with you by my side. Forever and ever. Every little thing that you do. Baby, I'm amazed by you. Every little thing that you do. I'm so in love with you. It just keeps getting better. I want to spend the rest of my life with you by my side. Forever and ever. Every little thing that you do. Oh, every little thing that you do. Baby, I'm amazed by you. As Naruto finished, he leaned in and gave Ino a deep and passionate kiss. She quickly wrapped her arms around his neck to pull him in deeper. Their tongues played with each other's, and as they broke he smiled at her as she ran her hand on his cheek, and he winked at her. Would you like me to sing I'll Be For You as well, beautiful? Ino thought about it and then nodded her head. She pulled him in close and whispered in his ear, I am going to give you a proper thank you on our honeymoon, wherever we are going, since you won't tell me where we are going. Naruto smiled at her while winking at her. He hadn't told her that they were going to an island resort and to a fancy hotel. Naruto then started to strum the guitar and kissed her one more time before he started. The strands in your eyes that color them wonderful. Stop me and steal my breath. And emeralds from mountains thrust towards the sky. Never revealing the depth. Tell me that we belong together. Dress it up with the trappings of love. I'll be captivated. I'll hang from your lips. Instead of the gallows of heartache that hang from above. I'll be your crying shoulder. I'll be love's suicide. I'll be better when I'm older. I'll be the greatest fan of your life. And rain falls angry on the tin roof. As we lie awake in my bed. You're my survival, you're my living proof. My love is alive and not dead. Tell me that we belong together. Dress it up with the trappings of love. I'll be captivated. I'll hang from your lips. Instead of the gallows of heartache that hang from above. Ino smiled as she started to rest her head on her hands as she stared at the man who had become her husband, and he looked at her as he smiled at her. She really did love to hear him sing, and he had always loved to sing for her as long as it pleased her. She was also enjoying how envious all the other women were as well. Apparently, no matter mature she got, there would always be the underlying need to show off what was hers. She was definitely going to make sure that Naruto was repaid for what he was doing for her right now. He really didn't seem like he was comfortable singing in public. I'll be your crying shoulder. I'll be love's suicide. I'll be better when I'm older. I'll be the greatest fan of your life. And I've dropped out, I've burned up, I've fought my way back from the dead. I've tuned in, turned on, remembered the things that you said. I'll be your crying shoulder. I'll be love's suicide. I'll be better when I'm older. I'll be the greatest fan of your. I'll be your crying shoulder. I'll be love's suicide. I'll be better when I'm older. I'll be the greatest fan of your life. The greatest fan of your life. Greatest fan of your life. Quote. Naruto finished and Ino stood up, coming over to her quickly and hugged him, then she kissed him gently on his lips. Ino then looked at all the women who were staring at him and she grabbed the microphone. Remember that he is mine or else I will kick all your asses. Naruto smiled as he wrapped his arms around her waist and kissed her neck, making her cheeks erupt into a crimson blush, and she looked back at him. I love you, Ino-chan. You know that no woman can hold a candle to you in my eyes. Ino smiled at her husband and grabbed his hand as she led him off of the stage while all the women were still staring at Naruto. Ino still felt like she had to get the point across that he was hers, so she sat him down on a seat and sat on his lap, making him smile. Naruto put his arms around her and held her on his lap as he smiled at her and kissed her lips gently. Ino-chan, you are such a jealous woman. I love that about you though. Ino smiled as she looked at him and leaned her head on his shoulder so that she could kiss his cheek. I have seen how you are glaring at all the guys, Naruto-kun, so you're a jealous man, but I love you for it as well. Naruto smiled as he held her close. The rest of the night was like a blur to the blonde newlyweds. Then it was time to leave. They both changed into more suitable clothes before leaving for their honeymoon as a long limo pulled up. Naruto and Ino got into the limo to go to the airport, then they were off. Ino resting her head on Naruto's lap, sleeping soundly as he stroked her hair. The driver knocked on the window to get Naruto's attention as he looked back. We are about 3 minutes from the airport if you want to wake up your wife, sir. Naruto nodded in thanks as he stroked her cheek and gently shook her. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at him with a smile. We are almost at the airport, Ino-chan, you should wake up. Ino nodded as she sat up and fixed her hair as the limo pulled up to the airport. Naruto grabbed their bags and they walked to the gate and waited for the flight. The time came and they checked their bags, then got onto the plane. Naruto had paid for first class, making her smile as they sat in first class and Ino rested her head on his shoulder. Ajin. The flight was quick and then they landed on the island of palms, making Ino's eyes light up at the name as she looked at Naruto. Did you really? Lemon chapter. Naruto smiled at her and nodded his head as they walked out of the plane. They quickly got their bags and Naruto offered Ino his hand. As always, she quickly took it as she smiled at him as they walked along the island to the fancy hotel on the beach. Naruto walked her to the hotel. As she saw how fancy it looked, she turned her attention to Naruto as they walked up to the front desk. She had the urge to jump him right then and there. Mr. and Mrs. Uzumaki reservation. The young employee searched on the computer and then found Naruto's reservation, then gave Naruto 2 keys. Your penthouse suite is waiting for you both. Have a good 2 weeks here at the Palms Hotel. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask Mr. and Mrs. Uzumaki. Naruto nodded and thanked him, and Ino and him walked over to the elevator and he put his arm around her and she smiled at him and kissed his cheek. This is an amazing honeymoon so far, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled as he leaned down and kissed her until the elevator arrived. She surprised him when she pulled him into it, not breaking their kiss. Ino smiled as she ran her hand down Naruto's body into his pants and started to rub his member as they continued to kiss until Naruto broke the heated kiss. Ino-chan, shouldn't we wait, till we get to our, room? Ino smirked at him and quickened her pace, making it so that Naruto put his arm against the elevator wall. As the elevator stopped, Ino watched as a young woman came into the elevator and Ino shifted Naruto into the corner and continued to go slowly, making Naruto grunted as he leaned down to kiss his wife. That feels good, Ino-chan, Ino smirked as she started to go faster, then she saw the woman trying to look and Ino turned Naruto some more. The young woman saw Ino was staring at her and looked away blushing, knowing she had been caught trying to catch a peek. Ino smirked and she felt Naruto run his hands down her back and into her skirt and squeezed her ass. She felt as he then ran his finger to her wet womanhood and started to rub it gently to extract a quiet moan from her. Naruto kissed Ino as she sped up the hand job that she was giving him to keep his moans quiet, then the floor binged and the other woman got off. Ino smiled at Naruto as she breathed heavily with lust in her eyes. If this elevator moves any slower I am going to make love to you in here. Naruto had a mischievous look in his eyes that Ino worried about and then he slipped behind her and he started to rub his erect member against her wet panties while kissing her neck and she gave a loud moan. Naruto felt as she moved her panties out of the way and then she guided him inside of her and she closed her eyes and moaned loudly from the sensation. Naruto put his hands on her hips and started to quickly go in and out of her and she moaned loudly and then the elevator binged and they were on their floor and Naruto pulled out of her and zipped up his pants and Ino grabbed his arm and pulled him to their room quickly. She opened the door to the extravagant suite and Naruto put the bags down and swept her into his arms and carried her to their room. I know what my wife needs right now. Ino smiled as Naruto carried her to the bedroom and he laid her down on the bed and they ripped each other's clothing off of them. Naruto kissed her passionately and then gave chakra-filled kisses down her body making her moan loudly and Naruto got to her womanhood and Naruto smiled and gave her a chakra-filled lick. Ino gave another loud moan and Naruto started to flick her clit with his tongue channeling chakra and she moaned loudly and Naruto got her to orgasm twice for that alone. Naruto then moved onto her dripping wet pussy and licked up all her cum and then inserted his tongue and started to lick around inside of her. He licked the walls of her pussy and her moaning increased as her walls tightened around his tongue and released in his mouth. Naruto went to continue but Ino pulled him up to her and she had lust burning in her eyes. Please Naruto-kun, as much as I love when you eat me out I really need you inside of me. Naruto smiled and leaned down and kissed his wife and she could taste herself on his lips and tongue as he slowly pushed himself inside of her and she moaned to the sensation. Naruto quickly started to pull out to the tip and thrust into her and kissing her neck and collarbone while squeezing her breasts. Naruto pushed himself all the way into the woman that he loved all the way to his base and her eyes rolled into the back of her head. Oh god, so deep. Naruto-kun. Naruto smirked as he pulled out to the tip and sent a hard thrust into her body and she moaned and wrapped her legs around him. Naruto continued to pull out to his tip and thrust all the way back into his wife, increasing his speed and power at a steady rate and her moaning was getting louder and louder. She screamed his name as she came to her third release from him being inside of her and her fifth that night and was panting. She was staying extremely tight and Naruto was thrusting but feeling himself getting close to the edge and he reached down and started to pinch her clit and sent chakra spikes through his fingers as he kissed her with chakra and she was lost in another world of pleasure and she came to another release and yelled out, God Naruto. I love you so much. Naruto pumped and he came inside of her and kept pumping until he was finished and moaned out, Ino-chan. I love you. Naruto rolled over to his side and looked at her as she had a happy smile on her face and he kissed her cheek. Did you enjoy that, Mrs. Uzumaki? Ino looked over at Naruto and pulled him into a passionate kiss and started to play with his tongue with hers and broke the kiss. You're amazing, Mr. Uzumaki. Naruto smiled as he put his arm around his wife and she leaned her head on his shoulder and smiled happily and looked at him. We are a naughty couple, Naruto-kun, especially after what we did in the elevator. Naruto smirked at her and kissed her gently and looked at her. You started it in the elevator, my dear, I just took it up a notch. Ino smirked as she held onto him and she nuzzled into his chest and closed her eyes to go to sleep. It was exhilarating, Naruto-kun. Good night, husband. See you in the morning. You tuckered me. Out. With that, Ino was asleep and Naruto was smiling and he held her close to him as he drifted off to sleep as well. Their 2 weeks of honeymooning were great. They laid out by the beach, ate at fancy restaurants, went to the amusement park they had there and enjoyed each other's bodies. Their honeymoon had to come to an end but Naruto didn't care if it did or not, he was just enjoying the time with Ino. The only reason that he chose the island of Palm for their honeymoon was because he overheard Ino tell Hinata it was her dream honeymoon but thought it would be too expensive. Naruto and Ino were on the plane and Ino was sleeping on his shoulder and he was smiling and closed his eyes as well and caught a couple of hours of sleep and he woke up to see a guy staring at Ino from the seat in front of them. There's something that you need. The man looked over at Naruto and then back over at Ino, who was waking up from feeling how tense his husband was. She is so hot. Naruto was raising an eyebrow at the man as Ino opened up her eyes a little and nuzzled back into Naruto's shoulder. Are we home, Naruto-kun? Naruto looked at Ino and kissed her forehead and responded while looking at the young man in front of them. We are almost home, babe. The young man sitting in front of them was starting to irritate Naruto with how he was staring at Ino, and Naruto spoke with an angered tone. You need to stop looking at my wife like that before I get angry. Ino opened her eyes wide and looked at Naruto, who was glaring, and she looked at the brown-haired man in front of them who was staring at her, and he winked at her. Sup, sexy. Naruto went to get up, but Ino held him down and she smiled at him. It's okay, Naruto-kun. I can handle this. Ino looked back at the man who was staring at her and she gave him an irritated look. What is it that you want, little boy? The boy smiled at Ino and winked at her again, and Ino rolled her eyes. Hey gorgeous, wanna join the Mile High Club with a stud? Ino rolled her eyes again and then looked over at Naruto and kissed his cheek. Naruto-kun, do you wanna join the Mile High Club? You're the only stud on the plane. Naruto smirked at her and leaned down and gave his wife a passionate kiss, and the brown hair man was irritated and left the couple alone, and Naruto broke the kiss and she looked at him. Well, do you want to, Naruto-kun? Naruto smiled at her and leaned down and kissed her cheek and then her neck and whispered in her ear, only if you want to, my dear. Ino unbuckled her seat belt and looked around at most of the other passengers sleeping and walked to the bathroom, and Naruto followed after 30 seconds later. The two went at it in the bathroom and Ino had a hard time trying to keep her moans quiet, and they spent most of the time kissing to help silence the moans. When they finished, Ino smiled and stood there and kissed Naruto again. Was a quickie for us, but we can always finish later or something, right dear? Naruto nodded at her as he wrapped his arms around her. You know that I am always ready to go, babe, so if that is what you want then I am all for it. Were you satisfied with our quickie? Ino nodded and put her arms around Naruto and leaned on him and then gave him a quick kiss and walked back to her seat, and Naruto peed really quick and then walked back to his seat and Ino fell asleep on his shoulder again. They landed in Konohagakure Airport and the newlywed couple got in a taxi and went back to their apartment, and as they got to the second floor they saw that there were boxes in front of Kiba and Hinata's apartment. Naruto and Ino walked into their friend's apartment and saw that Hinata was packing up her stuff to move out, and they both sighed. So you guys decided on divorce? Kiba looked over at Naruto from where he was sitting and drinking and then took another hit out of the bottle. I didn't decide on it, she did. Hinata put another box out in front of the apartment and Naruto looked at Ino and sighed. Did you two even try to talk this out? Hinata was ignoring Naruto, and then Ino looked at Naruto and shrugged and she went home, and Naruto looked at the failed marriage and walked out as well and went home. Naruto walked into the apartment and closed the door behind him and looked around and found Ino and walked up to her and pulled her into a deep, passionate, loving kiss. When they broke the kiss, Naruto looked at her. If we ever have an issue, Ino-chan, promise me that we will talk it out and not be like them. Ino smiled as she ran her hand on his cheek and pulled him into a gentle kiss and smiled at him. I promise, Naruto-kun, I love you far too much to let that happen to us. Naruto smiled at her and pulled her close to him. He was happy, which was something that he never truly thought that he could be. About 2 years passed and the young married couple was as happy as ever. Ino had decided that it was around time they rebooted the talk about children. This was something that she knew that he had always wanted, and the way he always was with their friends' kids was touching to say the least. Ino, on the other hand, wasn't sure she was ready for such a thing when they were first married, so he told her that he was just as happy with it just being the two of them. She knew that he wanted them though, and she had decided that she was going to give them to him. Ino had been cuddling into his chest as they watched a movie and he had fallen asleep holding her. Naruto-kun, wake up. Naruto's eyes shot open and he gave a small yawn and he looked at Ino and smiled. They had just gotten home from a S-rank mission, so they were on their week break. Yeah, Ino-chan. Ino cuddled into his chest and he could feel that she was tense about something. I think we should have children, Naruto-kun. Naruto looked at her as she looked up at him and he couldn't figure out by her eyes if she really wanted that yet. Ino-chan, if you were rushing yourself for me then you don't have to do that. Ino smiled at him. Just like always, he was putting her in front of his own wants. I know I want children eventually, Naruto-kun, and I know you want children, so for once I want you to put your own wants in front of mine. Naruto continued to look at her with that soul-piercing look that she loved and he looked back towards the TV. I want to wait a little longer then. Ino was baffled by what she just heard her husband say and she knew he was lying, so she climbed on top of him to block his view of the television and stared at him. No, you don't. You're just saying that because you think that I still want to wait. Naruto looked at her and pushed the hair out of the middle of her face like he always did. Ino-chan. I know you still want to wait. I see how you always make sure you change your birth control patches on time. I don't mind waiting for you to be ready. I really don't. Ino stared back at her husband and rubbed his whisker marks to get his weak point, and he smiled and closed his eyes enjoying it, but opened them when he heard her serious tone. Naruto Uzumaki, I want a child and you are going to give it to me. Naruto felt as if she was being serious with her tone, but her eyes were still questioning it. Ino Uzumaki, I love you. Naruto leaned in and kissed her as she put her arms around his neck to deepen the kiss, and he laid her down on the couch before he broke the kiss. Are you sure about this, Ino-chan? I really don't want to rush you into something like this, it's a major decision. Ino had become frustrated with the man at this point and responded out of anger and irritation while pushing him off of her. What the hell, Naruto, do you not want to have a child with me? Naruto looked at her. She must know that he wants to have a child with her. Ino-chan, you know that I want. Ino continued to yell at him though, as if his words weren't even getting near her ears. Why don't you just go and find some other hole to fill since you obviously don't want me? Naruto stared at her with hurt eyes and didn't know what to say or do, but he reached for her and she moved away from his reach. Get out now, Naruto. Naruto didn't want to make her more angry than she already was and slowly stood up, then looked at her. Okay, Ino-chan, I will leave you alone for a while like you want. I love you. Naruto walked over to the door and put his hand on the doorknob but stopped there. He didn't want to leave, but she yelled at him again, leave, Naruto. Naruto sighed as he opened the door and left like she wanted. He went to Burger Place and got a soda and sat there drinking it with his phone right there in case she decided to call him. He drank his soda and his phone never rang. When he finished his drink, he decided that it was about time that he went home and saw if his wife wasn't angry at him anymore. Naruto put his key in the door and unlocked it. He walked in to see all the lights were off. He locked the door before put his keys and wallet on the table next to the door. He walked through the apartment and found her lying in their bed, and he thought about it, then went to the guest room and laid in there. He didn't know if she was still mad at him or not. If she was still mad at him, he was worried that him laying down next to her would just infuriate her even more. Ino had been lying there awake though and was aware that Naruto had been looking at her, but he left to go to the guest room to sleep in there. Ino felt that she really couldn't blame him. She had freaked out on him and yelled at him to leave. He probably thought she was still mad at him. She stood up from the bed and walked to the door of the guest room. She stood there for a moment, then slowly opened the door to see Naruto lying there looking at the ceiling. Naruto felt uncomfortable. He didn't like sleeping in a different room than his wife, but this was the first time he felt that she might not want him to sleep next to her. He heard the sound of the door opening and turned his attention over at the door and saw her standing there looking at him. Ino-chan. Ino came in and laid down with him, and she wrapped his arm around her and nuzzled into his chest. Hi, Naruto-kun. Naruto looked at his wife and didn't know if he should talk. It didn't work out too well for him last time, but she spoke. Naruto-kun, I am sorry that I got angry and irritated. Naruto looked at her as she looked up at him, and they stared at each other. She could see how he looked at her with concern in his eyes. Ino-chan. I just don't want you to rush yourself. Naruto was hurt by her words earlier, but that reason was what started the whole being yelled at situation, and he figured that it was best to get it out there. Naruto-kun. I know. It's just that I know you want kids. Naruto looked at her as she cuddled into him on his old bed, and he held her close to him. Ino-chan, look at me. I don't care if we wait or never have kids. I am happy just being with you. Do I want kids? Then the answer is yes, but I can be happy just being with you. Ino smiled a little at his comment, and she slowly leaned in to give him a kiss, but he kissed her back. Then she broke the kiss and looked at him. Naruto-kun. I am sorry about yelling at you and what I said. Naruto looked at her and just stared at her before he let a small sigh escape him. I know you didn't mean it, Ino-chan. There is no way that you would say that to me. You're far too possessive for that. Ino nodded her head and she got closer to him and noticed that his shirt was still on, growling about it a little bit. Yeah, there is no way a rational me would ever tell you to go sleep with another woman. You are all mine. Naruto noticed her growling about his shirt and put his arms under his wife before lifting her up to carry her to their bedroom. Naruto laid her down gently on the purple sheets before he took off his shirt and laid down with her. She quickly cuddled into him, letting a content sigh out as she got her favorite pillow back. Ino-chan, you know that I would never cheat on you anyways. I just went to the burger joint and got a soda and sat there drinking it. Ino nodded her head as she looked up at him and she straddled him as he put his hands on her hips. He ran his hand over where her birth control patch usually was. Naruto's eyes widened a little as he felt that where the birth control patch was usually it was now vacant. Ino-chan. She knew that he would notice it since he usually ran his hands to her hips when she straddled him. I decided that we are going to continue with our usual activities, and if I get pregnant then it was meant to happen. Naruto looked at her as he saw that even her eyes were serious this time, so he smiled and nodded at her. Then they started on their fun. He was pretty sure how horny his wife was would make it so he never had to worry about a dry spell between the two. They continued this for around 5 months and then Ino noticed that she was late for her period and was throwing up frequently. Ugh. Can I be? Naruto had grown worried about his wife. She was always sick it seemed, so he knocked on the bathroom door. Ino-chan, are you okay? Ino threw up again as he opened the door and he came in. He quickly moved so that he could hold her hair out of the way. Ino-chan, did you eat something that was bad or something? Ino grabbed a box from under the sink with a groan as she felt sick and then she took out a stick and Naruto grabbed the box and saw what it was. You really think that you might be pregnant, Ino-chan? Ino nodded as she ushered him out of the bathroom so that she could pee on the stick. Hey, how come you're kicking me out? It's not like I haven't seen anything that you got down there, dear. He heard Ino muttering through the door as she peed on the stick and he smiled at the thought of him and Ino becoming parents. He waited outside the door until he heard the toilet flush, then he reopened the door and looked at her as she read the box. The box says we have to wait 5 minutes. They sat there and waited for an answer, then the stick showed positive, making Naruto break into a large smile, then looked over at Ino who looked a little worried. Ino-chan, are you alright? Ino looked over at Naruto and shook her head yes. He knew that she was worried about their child as well as if she will be a good mom. Ino-chan, you're going to be great. I will always be here for you and for our child. Ino looked over at her husband and nodded as she looked back at the pregnancy test. She felt an emotional mix of fear and happiness from the result. But, what if I am not a good mother, Naruto-kun? I don't think I could handle if our child hated me. Naruto looked at his wife with a concerned look, then wrapped his arms around her and kissed her cheek as held her close to him. You will be an amazing mother, Ino-chan, and our child will love you. Ino smiled, but she was still worried about it. I will talk to my mom about what I should expect, but at least I will have you during it, all right, Naruto-kun? Naruto smiled as he leaned down and kissed her passionately. Of course you will, Ino-chan. There is nowhere else I would rather be than here with you and our child. I will talk to Tsunade and get us a year of paid leave while you are pregnant and right after as well. Ino smiled at him. No one ever got a year of leave time, but he was always the optimistic type of person. No one is ever given a year of leave time, Naruto, so I wouldn't get my hopes up if I were you. Naruto smiled as he looked at her and kissed her forehead. You forget that I am like a son to her, Ino-chan. She will be considered a grandmother to our child. Ino smiled and she grabbed his hand as he smiled back at her. Let's go and tell Tsunade and get our leave time and then we will go tell your parents, okay? Ino nodded and he grabbed their jackets. As always, he helped her put hers on and kissed her neck gently, then grabbed his wallet and keys. Okay, let's go, my dear. They walked hand in hand towards the Hokage's office and then they saw Kiba come stumbling out of a bar. He had turned into a wreck after the divorce. Oh fuck you, dude. Kiba looked up and saw the blonde couple there and rolled his eyes before giving a fake smile. Well, if it isn't the happy couple. What are you guys doing here? Kiba took another hit off of the bottle he was holding and Naruto sighed at the mess his best friend had become. Kiba dude, you got to clean up your act if you want to see your godchild when it is born. Kiba froze as he looked over at his best friend who was smiling and Kiba dropped the bottle in shock of the news. What? You mean that Ino is pregnant? Naruto nodded and looked at his friend. Kiba, it is a shame that you and Hinata got a divorce, it really is, but you got to pull yourself together, man. Move on from it. I know that it is hard, even if you can't find love again. Living the way you do isn't the way to remember the good times you had together. All you're doing is remembering the bad parts. Kiba looked at his friend before sighing as he knew that Naruto was right and straightened himself out. I think that I need to go lay down now. Thanks, Naruto, and congratulations to both of you. Naruto and Ino watched as their friend walked away down the street stumbling a bit, and Naruto sighed at the unfortunate sight. I hope that I actually got through to him this time. Ino walked up to him, then grabbed his hand again as she smiled at him. Regardless of whether you did or didn't, Naruto-kun, you are still a good friend for always trying to help him. Naruto smiled and they walked the rest of the way to Tsunade's office. They knocked on the door and waited until Tsunade said that they could enter. Tsunade and Shizune were standing there as both groups greeted each other and smiling at each other. Naruto's smile got wider at the women who were like a mother and a sister to him as the blonde couple sat down on the chairs across from Tsunade. Good news, Tsunade. Tsunade looked at the excited blonde man. She rose an eyebrow and waved her hand to try to get him to continue the statement. What exactly is the good news then, Naruto? Ino smiled as she saw how excited her husband really was. She knew that he wanted a family, but she didn't know he had wanted it that badly. Ino-chan is pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother. Tsunade's face lit up. She knew how badly Naruto had wanted to have a family and was happy that he was going to get it. So then you were here to request paid leave time for the two of you. Naruto nodded his head and looked over at Ino, who was sitting quietly as she waited for Naruto to be rejected. Then he winked at her, confident that we was going to get the year for them both. Naruto then looked back at his mother. We want a year of paid leave time. That way I can be with Ino-chan while she carries the baby, as well as 3 or 4 months that we can take care of the baby before I start missions again. Ino sat there with a smirk waiting for her to freak out and tell him no, but Tsunade sat there with a smile, approved. This is my grandchild after all. Ino shot straight up in the chair and yelled what, making everyone looked at her as Naruto had a victorious smile. I told you she would approve it, Ino-chan. Ino rolled her eyes and sat back in the chair mumbling to herself as Naruto sat there with his smile still, and then he nodded at Tsunade. I also wanted to request either you or Shizune be our doctor through this all. Tsunade looked at Naruto and then over at Ino, who was waiting for an answer, and it was apparently obvious that she wanted the same thing as Naruto. Well, you both know Sakura is the head of the Konoha hospital, right? Ino shook her head no, she didn't want Sakura near her child or Naruto. I don't trust Sakura near my family. We want you to be our doctor. Tsunade had heard about all the issues that Sakura had given the couple and could understand where Ino was coming from, not wanting Sakura as her doctor. Well, Shizune, would you like to help them out? Shizune smiled at the blonde couple as she nodded her head. Yes, of course I will be the doctor. We will have our appointment each week on Monday until it is time you are close to delivery. At the point that you are bedridden, I will do home visits daily until you start to dilate and go into delivery. Naruto, will you be able to take care of her until then? Naruto nodded his head and smiled at Ino before his gaze returned to Tsunade. Ino and I both averaged about 10 million in Ryo a year from our S-ranked missions. Whatever way you want to pay us works for us. Tsunade looked at her records and saw the Uzumaki names and looked at Naruto. You average 25 million and Ino averages 15 million. We will pay you it all right now and deposit it in your account. Naruto nodded and he stood up, then offered Ino his hand. She smiled and took his hand as he helped her stand up. Now we are off to tell your parents love. Ino nodded and looked at her husband as they walked out after they had said the goodbyes to Shizune and Tsunade. Then they were off to Ino's parents' house. As they were walking, Naruto was thinking to himself, and they arrived at the Yamanaka flower shop. Ino's eye lit up as she looked at all the flowers and smiled. They look so beautiful, don't they, Naruto-kun? Naruto smiled at his wife and said yes as Ino came into the flower shop. How can I help? Oh, hello Ino and Naruto. What brings you two by? Isn't our monthly dinner next week? Naruto smiled over at Mrs. Yamanaka as Ino smelt some more of the flowers, and Naruto answered, yeah, our monthly dinner is next week, but we have some news to tell you and Mr. Yamanaka. Ina's eye went wide as she looked at the young blonde couple. Oh my god, you two aren't getting divorced, are you? Ino, think about what you are letting go. Ino rolled her eyes as she stopped smelling and admiring the flowers to look at her mother. No, Naruto-kun and I aren't getting a divorce, mother. We have something we want to tell you and daddy though. Ina nodded and locked the doors to the flower shop before turning the sign to say that it was closed, and they all walked into the house and Naruto looked around the flower shop one more time. Naruto then walked into the Yamanaka family house to see Inoiki standing there. Hello Mr. Yamanaka. Naruto reached out his hand as the two men shook hands and they all sat at the table as Ina spoke up. So what is it that you two wanted to tell us? Naruto looked at Ino and waited for her to tell her parents. She smiled at him knowing he was going to let her tell him. We wanted to tell you that I am pregnant. Ina's face lit up almost as much as Tsunade's had, and Inoiki had a stunned look as he looked at the young couple but then smiled at them. Congratulations to both of you, how far along? Naruto looked over at Ino and she looked at her father as she continued to smile. My best guess is a little over 1 month. Naruto thought back to the time that coincided with 1 month and a smirk arose on his face as he thought about it until Ino elbowed him in the side. I know what you were doing and stop it, Naruto-kun. Naruto scratched the back of his head and smiled at Ino as he kissed her gently on the cheek. Sorry dear, just can't help it sometimes though. Ino smiled at her husband. It's not really like she had much room to complain. She had thought about it at Tsunade's office. It's okay babe, I forgive you. Naruto smiled at his wife and looked over at the Yamanaka family. Hey Mr. Yamanaka, can I talk to you for a moment? I know Ino-chan has things she wants to talk to Mrs. Yamanaka about. Inoiki nodded at his son-in-law and stood as Naruto stood as well and kissed Ino on her forehead. I will be back babe, okay? Ino smiled at her husband and nodded her head but pulled him in for a passionate kiss before he left. I was getting tired of you kissing everywhere but my lips. Naruto smiled at her and kissed her gently on her lips again, then walked off into the backyard with Inoiki, and Ino looked at her mom. Mom. I am worried. Naruto and Inoiki walked over to the table that was in the backyard and they sat down, and Inoiki looked at Naruto. So what is it you want to talk about, Naruto? Naruto looked at the house and then back at Inoiki. I was wondering how much you paid for the house, since it had the flower shop attached and all. Inoiki looked at Naruto and understood what he was asking. I paid about 5 million ryo for the house and pay about 1 million in my utilities per year for the shop and the house. Naruto nodded as he looked at the house before his gaze returned back at Inoiki. Would you or Mrs. Yamanaka care if I bought the other flower shop house on the other side of town? Inoiki smiled at the man. No Naruto, we wouldn't have an issue with it, but I think you should talk to Ino about it before you make the decision. Naruto nodded as he smiled as he remembered how Ino was paying attention to the flowers. I am hoping that when our child is born that Ino-chan will be able to retire and she can have a flower shop like she has always wanted. Inoiki smiled at his son-in-law's thoughts and patted Naruto on the shoulder as he continued to smile at him. That is a good thought, Naruto. I am sure that Ino will support you because you make a lot of money on your own. Naruto nodded his head as he smiled about starting a family. I want to make a good environment for my child. I want our child to always have at least a parent around and both as much as possible. I have a lot of money saved up from all my missions as well as selling my collection before Ino and I were together. I am hoping that she will like it and choose to do it. Inoiki saw that the man had put a lot of thought into it. How long have you been thinking about doing this, Naruto? Naruto looked at the man and smiled a little. I have been thinking about buying us a house for a couple months now, but the pregnancy and how happy she looks when she is around flowers made me want to do it this way. Inoiki smiled at his son-in-law. Well, if Ino decides that she is on board with you, then we won't have any issue sharing the business with you too. It's on the other side of town anyways. Naruto nodded and shook hands with Inoiki before they walked back to the back door of the Yamanaka house, and they saw that the two women were done having their conversation, and Naruto smiled at his wife as she smiled back. Hey dear. While Naruto and Inoiki were talking, this is what Ino and Ino were talking about in the house. What is it that you are worried about, Ino? Ino looked at her mother and sighed as she looked down at the table and traced circles. I don't know if I will be good at being a mom. Her mother smiled at her. She had faith in Ino. Ino dear, I have seen how good you do when you babysit, and you will have Naruto with you for it. He is gone at the most 2 weeks a month typically. Ino nodded her head. It was approximately right. He got deployed frequently as a top shinobi. Yeah, but usually I go with him. I doubt that is how it will be when our 1-year leave is up. Ina smiled at her daughter. Well, I can't say that I necessarily blame him, dear. After the childhood he had, something he will strive for is that his child never has a life like that. Ino knew that to be true. He would do everything in his power to make sure their child never had something like that. I think he is going to ask me to retire from being a kunoichi. Ina smiled at her daughter some more as they looked at each other. Well, is that such a bad thing? You will have your child and Naruto is sure to make it so that you aren't bored or anything like that. Ino smiled. Knowing Naruto, he already had some giant plan that was more than what she needed, but that was one of the many reasons that she loved him. Yeah, he will do something major that will be more than I needed, but perfect as well. Ina smiled at her daughter and saw that she was still worried though. Ino, it is okay to be worried. I can see that Naruto is worried as well, and I know that you can. Sure, you may be worried for different reasons, but all you have to do is rely on one another to make sure that everything goes the way that it should. Ino nodded her head. She was worried that she may fail as a mother, but Naruto was worried about the Kyuubi more than anything. He is worried about the Kyuubi. I saw his eyes when we were walking to Tsunade's office before we ran into Kiba. He put his hand on my stomach and his eyes went wide and he froze for a moment. Naruto-kun never freezes. Ina had a sad smile. She had seen Naruto being hurt quite a bit when he was a young boy, but never helped him to keep the Yamanaka name high. I can't blame him for it. He had a rough childhood. Ino had a small smile on her face as she remembered their first date. You know that he is actually happy about his childhood being so rough. He says that he doesn't know that without it he would have become the man he is today, and he likes who he is. He is an idiot, but he is a lovable idiot, and he is my lovable idiot. Ina smiled at her daughter and Ino looked over at the back door and saw Naruto and Inoiki come back into the house as he smiled at her and she smiled back as he spoke, "Hey dear." Ino smiled at him some more and then looked at her mother and nodded as she got up and hugged her, commented then hugged her father, "Thank you mom, always nice to see you. You too daddy, we will see you next week for the family dinner." Naruto gave Ina a hug goodbye and shook hands with Inoiki before he grabbed Ino's hand and they walked out of the front door and they walked towards their apartment. As they walked, Naruto gave Ino a quick kiss on the cheek. "Do you have more energy, Ino-chan? I want to show you something." Ino looked at Naruto and then nodded her head. He was starting to put his plan into motion as they walked to the other side of town and stopped around the corner from where Naruto wanted to be. "Here, I want to cover your eyes." Ino rolled her eyes but let him do it anyways. She smiled as he kissed her quickly before he did and then walked her to the flower shop house and whispered in her ear, "I want to get this for our family, Ino-chan. I know you might not like the idea, but I want you to retire after the leave is up. I can take care of us. I don't want our child to be alone." Ino knew that he was going to ask her that. "I already knew that you wanted that, Naruto-kun. I have thought about it as well. I will retire for you and our child, but I will not be bored out of my mind, understood?" Naruto kissed her cheek then removed his hands and Ino looked at the other flower shop house. There were only two in the village and then she looked back at Naruto. "Naruto-kun, as sweet as it is, we can't do that to my parents." Naruto smiled at her and kissed her gently on the lips. "I talked to your dad about it and he said that he is fine with the idea of us owning the other shop, plus now you can have your flowers since that is your true passion." Ino smiled at her husband. She had been right earlier, it was more than what she needed but perfect for what she wanted and kissed him on the cheek. "Okay Naruto-kun, can we go look inside?" Naruto nodded and they opened the door to the actual house and it was a little bigger than her parents' house as she went and looked in the flower shop area and smiled. "It's perfect Naruto-kun, when can we put in an offer?" Naruto looked at how happy she was as he leaned in the doorway and smiled at her. "We can put in an offer tonight if you want, Ino-chan." Ino smiled as she looked back at him then walked over and pulled him into a passionate kiss. "You always know exactly what to do to make me happy, Naruto-kun." Naruto smiled and leaned his forehead against hers, then she took his hand and they looked upstairs where the bedrooms were and there were 4 bedrooms and 2 baths, the master and 3 others and Ino spoke, 3 other bedrooms huh, we will have spares then, I only want 1 child for the foreseeable future Naruto-kun. Naruto kissed her cheek and then looked at the rooms. He noticed that they were all good size and he grabbed her hand as they went back downstairs to look at the den, dining room, kitchen, backyard and bathroom that was downstairs. "Naruto-kun, are you sure this won't be too much money?" Naruto smiled at her as he wrapped his arms around her and he held her close to him. "I think that no matter how much it costs it is the perfect home for our family, don't you? It's not like I don't have the money to be able to buy this place for us and the utilities for your parents' house is only 1 million a year so we can afford it babe, if you want it then we will get it." Ino looked over her shoulder at her husband and kissed his chin as the gazes locked with each other. "What is it that you are worrying about Naruto-kun? I saw you earlier." Naruto grabbed her hand and led her out of the house back towards Tsunade's office so they could buy the house. Naruto looked up at the sky then he looked back at her. "When I had my hand on your stomach there was a connection between my Kyuubi chakra and the baby. I am wondering if just some of the chakra transferred or if it is worse than that." Ino leaned into her husband's arm and looked up at him. "Well, your mom and dad got pregnant with you and gave birth while she was the Jinchuriki, right Naruto-kun?" The QB stayed with her until it was pulled out by Toby. That makes me believe that it is just QB chakra that was transferred, and if that is the case, isn't it good? Regeneration, high stamina, power and speed, but no QB. Naruto hadn't really thought of it that way, and he looked up at the sky again as they walked. I think that you were right, Ino-chan. Ino smiled at him and he leaned down and gave her a deep kiss as they walked some more. He looked at her. So what is it that you are worried about, babe? Ino looked away for a minute. She hated that she felt this way. I am worried that I won't be able to do a good job as a mother still, Naruto-kun. Naruto picked her up and she looked at him in surprise as he smiled at her. He then leaned his head against hers as he walked with her in his arms. I know you, Ino-chan. I see how good you are with kids from all ages, Ino-chan. You're going to be amazing as a mother, my dear. If you ever need something as well, you know that I will be there for you as much as possible. I will do anything that you ask of me, just like I do now. Ino smiled as her husband carried her back to the Hokage's office and he knocked on the door, still holding her. Naruto-kun, you know you can put me down, right? Naruto smiled at her and kissed her lovingly on her lips, but he continued to hold her. Yeah, that is one option, or I can keep holding you like this. They heard Tsunade yell for them to come in and Naruto opened the door as he carried her in there. Ino couldn't help but start to blush as Tsunade looked at him. Is there a reason you're holding her like that, Naruto? Naruto shook his head no and smiled at Ino. Why does everyone keep asking me if I have a reason to carry my wife around? Might as well use my muscles for something, right? Ino continued to blush as she kissed his cheek and looked at him. Okay, Naruto-kun, time to put me down. You can carry me home afterwards since my feet hurt, okay? Naruto smiled and nodded at her as he put her down. She walked over and sat in one of the chairs across from Tsunade as Naruto sat in the other as he spoke to Tsunade. I wanted to know how much that other flower shop house cost, Tsunade. Tsunade rose her eyebrow and then pulled out the real estate files, browsing until she found the file. It costs 3.5 million to buy it, cheaper than most because of the renovations that are needed. Why? Naruto took out his wallet and grabbed his bank card to hand it to her. Tsunade knew what was going on now. Or Naruto, are you buying a house for your family and a flower shop one at that? Naruto smiled at her and nodded his head as he looked at Ino. Ino-chan and I talked about it, and after her leave time is over she is going to retire so that our child always has a parent around when I am on missions. With the flower shop I know she will be really happy. Ino smiled at him and she stuck her tongue out at him. I have to have something that is entertaining around the house. You're not as fun as you used to be, Naruto-kun. Naruto rose an eyebrow at her and smirked. Oh, is that right, Ino-chan? Well then I guess you don't get the gifts I bought you yesterday. Ino's jaw dropped and she gave her pout face to Naruto as he smirked at her. Not going to work this time, Ino-chan. I'm not as fun as I used to be, remember? Ino scooted closer to him and put her hand on his arm. But. Naruto-kun, I want my gifts from my amazing husband. You are still fun, I was just teasing. Please, I love you so much, baby. Naruto was smiling at her and kissed her gently on the cheek as he continued to smile at her. Okay, Ino-chan, you can have your gifts. You know I am a softie when it comes to you. Ino smirked and Tsunade had the transaction all set up and Naruto swiped his bank card and the property was now in his name, and he smiled and did his shadow clone hand sign and summoned 250 clones and sent them to start working on the house repairs, and he carried Ino home. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.